Hi, I'm Liv, and welcome back to the not quite book nook. So I quite enjoyed filming in here the other day, in this spot, plus everything's still a bit of a mess over there. I have tidied up all my shelves and everything's lovely, but I've still got stuff everywhere because I'm packing to go to Portugal. Anyway, that's by the by. So this is just a quick little intro bit to the main event. So the main part of this video is going to be the chat that I had with the lovely Naomi Wood, who is the chair of the judges for the Goldsmiths Prize 2017. So I went up to the Shortlist event, as you will know from my last video, and I managed to have a little chat with Naomi afterwards about the shortlist. So that's going to be the main bulk of this video. What I'm going to do first is just quickly run through the shortlist in alphabetical order so that you know what books we're talking about. So the first one on the shortlist is Nicola Barker's Happy. Then we've got Sara Baume's A Line Made by Walking. Then we have got Kevin Daly's Playing Possum, which I don't have a copy of, and I haven't had much luck trying to get hold of one yet either. But this is what that looks like. So that's Playing Possum, and that's by Arg Press. I'll talk more about that in a bit. Then we've got John McGregor's Reservoir 13. Then Gwendolyn Riley's First Love. And Will Self's Phone, which is junky, so there we go. So that there is the shortlist for the Goldsmiths Prize 2017, plus Kevin Daly's Playing Possum, as I say, which I don't have a copy of. So now I am going to hand over to past me and Naomi Wood as we have a little chat about the shortlist. You can tell from this how unused I am to filming with other people. I just spend the whole time sort of sat there going, like, I don't know where to look. Do I look at the other person? Do I look at the camera? Obviously I need to look at the other person because it's a conversation, but I also need to be keeping an eye anyway. So here's past me and Naomi Wood talking about the shortlist.
Do I look at you? Or do I look at you?
I don't know. I do a lot of just me, but I've never had anyone else.
Okay,
on either, so I don't know what I'm doing either. So
I'll look at you.
Be fun. So I'm joined by the wonderful Naomi Wood, wonderful published author, great books, read them, and also the chair of the judging panel for this year's Goldsmiths Prize. And you've just told an adoring audience who were...
Well, they were adoring of Ali Smith.
Can we just have a little love-in for Ali Smith at the moment? Because that was incredible.
Exultant.
I was welling up at one point. Yeah. That was incredible.
Yeah.
But you followed superbly.
Yeah, thank you.
You followed superbly with the wonderful shortlist for this year. So, chair of judges. So remind us who your fellow judges were this year.
So I was joined this year by novelist and short story writer Kevin Barry, novelist and short story writer A.L. Kennedy, and Tracy Thorne, who writes for the New Statesman and is a writer as well. And we spent the whole summer reading experimental novels set in different worlds, novels written in different languages, novels doing crazy things on the page. And it was really intense.
How many novels were submitted?
I don't know if
Did you lose count?
Yeah, it was a very large amount sent to the Goldsmiths Prize, and then we read a selection over the summer, and then we come up with this shortlist, and we whittle it down to 6, and then obviously the winner is announced in November.
And how long have you actually been sitting on the shortlist?
A week.
A week.
Not very long.
How hard has that been to not go screaming and telling everybody?
I haven't told a soul.
Have you not?
No.
Well done.
Not even my partner.
Well done.
But yeah, no, it was fine actually. Yeah.
Good. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the shortlist then?
So I'm going to do it in alphabetical order if I can remember.
No particular order.
Yeah. So first off we have Happy by Nicola Barker, and that's a really interesting novel doing lots with kind of typographical signalling and flashes. And it's meant to look like a utopia, and it's written in this kind of almost like bland social media-esque language.
Right.
And it's probably the book out of the 6 where it typifies the innovation and the design as part of its form.
Right.
It's great.
I've been eyeing it up for a while.
Yeah,
been eyeing it up for a while.
Who goes next? A Line Made by Walking, Sara Baume, and that's a really interesting sort of anti-narrative. A woman goes back to live in her grandmother's house in County Cork. It uses digression really interestingly. It talks about 200 or so pieces of artwork, and then it includes its own artwork in part of the text as well. So it includes the photographs that she takes every day on this kind of degeneration of soul, dark night of the soul. Really interesting, and again what it's doing with the text on the page.
Cool. And then
Playing Possum.
Playing Possum, yep.
By Kevin Davey. Probably the trickiest to talk about.
It's one I'd definitely not heard of.
It's with the smallest press.
Yeah.
It's with R press. I don't know how many A's are in that.
Okay.
It's a kind of mishmash of different scenes, different timelines. You think there's a poet who may be T.S. Eliot going down to Whitstable in 1922, but he may also be followed by Otto Dix, the German painter, and there is also a film going on. So there's this polyphony of different voices, different registers, snatched sounds, ventriloquized voices. It's crazy and brilliant.
Oh, this sounds very
It's like
much
The
up my
Wasteland
street.
in a novel.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's like
There's
music
the
to my
pitch.
ears. That's
Yeah.
music to my ears, that is. Oh, dear. And the next one was...
Kevin Davey, and then it goes Reservoir 13 by John McGregor. This is a beautiful...
I love this book.
Novel of community, and it breaks the rules of show, don't tell. So there's very, very few dramatized scenes. It's this really large moving carousel of time, and it's spent it takes place over a decade, and it's this sort of inexorable crunch of time. What happens to this village in the Pennines, I think, in Yorkshire. It's beautiful, quiet, delicate, and very, very...
It's gorgeous.
Very, very controlled. It's, quite
A lot
brilliant.
of upset that one didn't get on the Man Booker shortlist, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
well,
so quite a
it's
few
on ours.
happy
It's on
happy
ours.
songs.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
on
I
yours,
noticed
so
that.
yeah, loads of people going, yes. Brilliant.
So after McGregor comes... It's
First
Gwendolyn
up, Gwendolyn
Riley.
Riley. There
Yes.
we go. Yeah.
So this really interesting novel, tonally extremely strange, and it was... We felt like it was innovative in just the distance of the voice and the strangeness of the character and the unrelenting brutality of the novel. A sort of demented relationship that goes wrong, brilliantly kind of rendered with strange slips in time and strange slips in perspective. It's extraordinary.
Very unsettling one, I remember.
Yeah,
that one. Very unsettling,
and then we get to Phone, Will Self's 600-page paragraph, an amazing addition to that extra modernist trilogy.
That was something I was going to ask you. With the trilogy, does it work on its own if you've never read the trilogy?
Yes, absolutely. It has the kind of mind languages or the stream of consciousness of 4 different characters just crashing into one another. So it's this, as I said, this kind of web of mind and memory, and the whole book becomes this sort of massive pulsing brain in itself. It's extraordinary, and you never lose where you are in the novel because of his just brilliant, artful turn of phrase.
Right. It's a 600-page paragraph.
But you kind of stop caring about that pretty quickly.
And that was what I loved about Solar Bones last year, is whenever you orient yourself in it, so
Yeah, you just... I think with all of the books, you unlock the code, the thing that seems to be making itself difficult, and then once you do that, you
once
kind
you're
of
in, you're in, aren't you? Yeah.
You start going... Yeah.
It's like getting in a cold swimming pool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You start doing the breaststroke.
I'm more of a doggy paddle. So when is the winner announced?
I don't know. Sometime in November. Beginning of November. I think we're deciding on the 3rd. So it'll be a week after that. The 11th, maybe.
Cool. Can I ask, I don't know whether you'll be able to tell me, are there any honourable mentions that didn't make it onto the shortlist that were like your personal kind of favourites or books you just enjoyed discovering through the process of reading for the shortlist?
I don't think I'm allowed to tell you.
I didn't think you would. I thought I'd try. I thought I'd give it a try.
I don't think I am.
It was worth a try.
I could try, but I might get in trouble.
That's all right. It's worth a try. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So another huge thank you to Naomi for sitting and having a chat with me about the shortlist. So I'm just going to go through some of my thoughts on the shortlist. Some pleasant surprises on there, some not unpleasant surprises, but you know what I mean. Nicola Barker's Happy. I'm not really surprised this one was on here. As I say, I haven't read this one yet, but I've been eyeing it up since before it came out. And you guys will know from a couple of hauls that I've never read any Nicola Barker before. And when this one came out, I bought myself a copy of Darkman's, which is another one of hers, which is absolutely massive. Whoops. She sounds like the kind of author that I'm going to love, and I since went out and got a few of her sort of backlist in secondhand. So this one I'm really, really intrigued about. So it's sort of a futuristic world, post-apocalyptic, Alice in Wonderland style thing, but it's futuristic. Have I said that already? I can't remember, I'm not very good today. But the thing that I'm really intrigued about by this one is, obviously, one of the things about the Goldsmiths Prize is that it champions fiction that plays with the form of the novel. It's fiction at its most novel, so it plays with the meaning of the word novel, and it sort of picks as its shortlist books that play with that form. And with Nicola Barker's Happy, you've got, now I can't find an example, I'm trying to find a page where, there we go, so you've got things like this, so you've got different fonts, different coloured fonts, and it all sort of plays with form. And this one sort of reminds me a little bit to look at of Mark Danielewski's House of Leaves, where it has the odd word, or particular words I should say, in different colours that sort of mean something. And from what I can tell, Happy does similar things. So I'm really, really intrigued by this one. So that one I am quite intrigued about. I've mainly heard positive things, and as I say, Nicola Barker, despite having never read her before, sounds like she's going to be my kind of author. So I'm really excited to give that one a read. Now, Sara Baume's A Line Made by Walking, I was sent a proof by William Heinemann a while ago, and for some reason haven't got around to reading it, and it sounds really, again, up my street. I've never read Spill, Simmer, Falter, Wither, and I'm honestly surprised that I managed to say that right. And it surrounds a sort of 20-something-year-old girl who retreats to her grandmother's old house, and her grandmother died previously, and she sort of retreats to this house that's on Turbine Hill. I think it's a bungalow or something like that. And it's about her sort of exploring loneliness and family connections, and it sounds like my kind of thing. And what this one does as well is it's got illustrations in there and some photographs as well, and again plays with that form. And this one I am going to be taking on holiday with me, so you'll see this one again in my holiday TBR. But this one looks really, really exciting. Kevin Davey's playing Possum. I know pretty much nothing about, if I'm honest with you. Other than what Naomi's told me, all I know is it plays with sort of T.S. Eliot, detective fiction, and it draws on sort of local history of the Whitstable area, and literature, songs, films, and things like that. So I don't know as much about this one. So this one's from a really indie press called ARG Press, which I love. How many R's are in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 A's and RGH, and then the word press. So ARG Press, which reminds me of, you know, that little zombie in the credits at the end of Buffy? Grr, ARG, grr, ARG, which I always used to love. So it reminds me of that, so that's fun. And I haven't been able to get hold of a copy of this one, and I don't know if anyone else has had any luck, but it's by this really small publisher. And yeah, at the moment, not been able to get hold of that one, but as soon as I can, I'm going to be, because I think this is the one that intrigues me the most, and that's always the case, I think, with a lot of prizes and with a lot of people. The ones that are from indie presses, the ones that are really sort of championed from, I was going to say from the bottom up then, but that sounds really patronising, but you know what I mean, the ones that wouldn't necessarily have found as much of an audience as they will thanks to a prize. I'm not going to get into the whole politics of indie presses and literary prizes. There's been a whole sort of discussion about that recently, and I totally take those points. The sort of, anyway, not getting into that. But the ones that are always published by indie presses are the ones that sort of intrigue me the most. So I'm very, very keen to get hold of a copy of this and to give it a go. So Playing Possum by Kevin Davey, that's what I'm quite excited about. Then Reservoir 13 by John McGregor. You guys know that I really liked this one. I didn't sort of love it as much as If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things, and I think that is the thing for me with this novel, is I did love it, I did enjoy it, and I love John McGregor's writing, and I love what he does with this novel. For me, it was just the fact that it was never quite going to measure up to the heights of If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things, and the impact that had on me as a reader. But having said that, you know, it is a really solid novel. In terms of playing with form, it does it beautifully, this constant rolling exploration of a community that almost sort of feels in real time. It does take a bit of adjusting. I sort of said this in my review for this one. It takes a bit of adjusting too, because you're constantly kind of waiting for more to happen than happens, but it's about the way things happen in a community like this. So, really interestingly done. The noise in the room when this one was announced as being on the shortlist was brilliant, because I think a lot of people, and I sort of mentioned it in the chat with Naomi Wood, and I know I probably shouldn't talk about other prizes when you're talking to the Cherry Judges for one prize, that was my bad, but a lot of people were surprised and a bit disappointed that this didn't make the Man Booker shortlist. So the fact that this is on the Goldsmiths Prize shortlist will, I think, make a lot of people happy. And yeah, I'm happy to see this one on here. This is one of the ones that probably, well, I can't decide if it surprised me or not. Then we've got Gwendolyn Riley's First Love. So this was published by Granta, and it was on the Bailey's Prize shortlist as well. And I read it then, and I'm not sure whether to maybe give this one another go. I didn't love it, and I think this is the one that I was probably most surprised at. Probably purely because I didn't love it, if that makes sense. It's a very selfish reaction to have, but there we go. It's a book that explores a marriage between what they called Neve and Edwin, and their marriage is a bit of a battleground. He's older than her, and he's quite sort of manipulative and abusive, and it plays with that. And what it does well is it explores the sort of perception of marriage from one person's perspective in a way that, you know, they won't necessarily see a lot of the behaviours that we see through them will ring alarm bells to us, and they won't necessarily always ring the same alarm bells for that person whose perspective we're getting it from, if that makes sense. But my problem with this, I think, is possibly the last line in the blurb. But is this nonetheless also a story of love? And it just felt, I don't know, in terms of a novel that deals with spousal manipulation, spousal abuse, which it does, and it does it well, as I say, for all the reasons I've just said, but there was something about it that just sat quite uncomfortably for me. But it might be one that I give another go, but it was one I didn't connect to particularly, but we'll see. And then the final one on the shortlist is the chunkiest one, Will Self's Phone. So this is 600 odd pages. The end papers are quite glorious, I have to say. Now, I could be wrong, but I believe it's Umbrella and Shark that this one sort of fits into as not as a trilogy per se, and that's something that, you know, I was quite clear to ask Naomi, for my own benefit, as much as anyone else's, is does it matter if you haven't read the other two in the sort of loosely linked trilogy to enjoy this one? And she said, no, it's not that kind of... It's going to have lots of different characters, competing sort of viewpoints, clashing, or running into each other. You've got 4 characters, you've got a bit of sort of intrigue, you've got an MI6 agent, it's a sort of converging of violence, technology, all sorts of different elements. It's going to be sort of quite modern, contemporary concerns and things like that. Will Self is a funny one. I'm sure it doesn't need me to say that. Plenty of people would have said it before. What have I read of Will Self before? Plenty of his articles. And I've read one of his short story collections, but the name escapes me, Dorian, and, you know, there's a quality to his writing that always is quite inventive, quite brutal, quite raw, and quite exposing. But there's something about... There's that separation again between the writer and the writing that Will Self is one of those where you sometimes possibly have to inject a bit of a... You know, his comments in the past about, you know, creative writing degrees. That's all I'm saying. That's a whole other video. So I was a little bit indecisive as to whether I did read the whole shortlist. Well, I say I was. I think I was thinking I was indecisive, whereas in actual fact I knew that I am going to read the shortlist, because I've already read 2 of them, and I already owned another one of them. Another one I wanted to read anyway. Playing Possum I was intrigued by. The only one I think I was really on the fence about was Will Self's Phone. And I will just sort of see how it goes. As I say, the others I do want to read. I've been meaning to read A Line Made by Walking for a while. Happy has intrigued me. Playing Possum I'm keen to read. So I think I'll just read those, and then if I really can't be faffed, you know, and that's just me, you know, life's too short to read books you're not actually that sold on. But I got myself a copy so that if the mood strikes me, then I've got until the 15th of November to read it, which isn't that long. So in terms of books that didn't make it onto the shortlist, it's quite a tricky one with the Goldsmiths Prize, because it doesn't do a long list and then down to a shortlist. You don't really know what else was ever in the running. But there are things like George Saunders' Lincoln in the Bardo, but I'm not quite sure of the eligibility dates for the Goldsmiths Prize. All prizes do them slightly differently. So it may be that Lincoln in the Bardo was outside of that, or whether it was just deemed that, you know, that one, yes, it plays with the form, yes, it's a brilliant novel. You know, this is all just me assuming that that's what they think. but these ones possibly, you know, have something more to them, and that's the reason they've been on the shortlist. But yeah, I was surprised, mostly at the Gwendolyn Riley, I have to say, and a little bit at the Will Self, but then also not, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's my little video on the Goldsmiths Prize. It was a real pleasure to go to the evening again. I know I spoke about it on the debriefing, London debriefing video that I've done, but an absolute pleasure to go. Really, really pleased that I was invited and grateful that I got the chance to go, to be in the same room as Ali Smith. I'm still not over it, guys. Still not over it. And as soon as the New Statesman do publish Ali Smith's lecture, I will be raving about it. Raving about it. As I already have been. Raving about it some more. Have you read any of the shortlisted books? Are you tempted by any of the shortlisted books? Will you be reading the whole shortlist? Sorry, I had a coughing fit and I thought I was over it, but I'm not quite. Bear with. So the winner will be announced on the 15th of November. I believe there are some shortlist readings in the weeks leading up to that. So if you're in London, if you're near New Cross and you're near Goldsmiths, that's where I believe well, it makes sense, that's where the readings will be hosted. So if you get a chance to go along and see some of these being read, I would. And once again, a huge thank you to Naomi Wood for doing a bit of filming with me. It was really lovely to sit down with her and have her tell me a little bit more about the prize. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.